classrooms, we can't get our education technology away. So our projector is not projecting, and our sound, we have no sound. So I'm going to do some dancing, that's right, tap dancing, some low-tech options. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Jeff Borden. I am the Chief Innovation Officer at St. Leo University. I have been a professor for 20 years. I have traveled the world during that time, speaking to audiences all over the place. I've done plenaries and keynotes in Germany, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, Australia. I really love talking with educators about how to fix problems that we all deal with. And I have a bent toward trying to find ways to do that with technology to help us do it at scale, but that's not always the case. And so I will say to you as we start here, and this may be ironic, technology is not the solution. Technology is an empowering agent from my perspective. It is like the lights. As long as it works, then you can work in the dark. And if it doesn't work, then you're stuck in the dark. And right now we're a little stuck in the dark with the technology I want to show you. So I'm going to do some things that are not technologically based, okay? I want to start by talking a little bit about success. So I'm going to read something off of my presentation here. And I'm going to have you take an inventory. All right, a lot of people talk about what success is. And they will tell you it's success is based on a score. It's based on an ACT or an SAT. Or if you're going to see if a student's going to be successful, they're going to base it on whether their parents attained a certain level of education. You may be familiar with the research that suggests a person will not go higher or farther than their parents did in their educational level. Other people say, no, it's an index. That it's about GPA and grade and other things that you put together. Well, there's a lot that we're starting to know about the brain, about learning, and how that impacts what we do day to day. I really like some of the work coming out of like Stanford and University of Pennsylvania. If you want to see a non-cognitive, or less, I don't know if non-cognitive is the right word, but that's what they're calling it. If you want to see a success indicator, go to the University of Pennsylvania's website, and you can take a grit test. And it will show you your tenacity score, your perseverance score. And they would argue that students that get a high score in terms of grit are more likely to persist. They're more likely to retain, to stay in the game. And that's something that is always what we're all after, right? Well, I want to try another inventory for you guys. Just one second. Tech? Yeah. Can't get this to project. I'll let you work in the background, right? And then I also need sound. Yeah, thanks. As far as another indicator goes, though, I want to provide you with an inventory of my own. So I would like you to actually score yourself on this inventory. If you need something to write down, I'm going to give you 10 markers. And those 10 markers, you're going to score yourself with a 0, a 1, a 2, or a 3. Okay? Since I can't show it to you, I'm just going to read it out loud to you. All right? But let me go through the first one with you, and we will sort of go from there. All right? The first one is, I rarely plan ahead. I'm a spur-of-the-moment kind of person. If that fully applies to you, then I would like you to score yourself with a 3. You say, absolutely, that's who I am. If you say, no, I have to plan out even when I'm going to go to the restroom. All right, I plan out everything. Then you would probably give yourself a 0. And the 1 and the 2 are for those sort of hazy shades of gray somewhere in the middle. Okay? So there are 10 of these. Let me go through and read them to you so you can then score yourself. And then please aggregate and accumulate the score at the end. All right? All right, so the first one I gave you, the second one. I would be good at a dangerous job because I can make up my mind quickly. 0 means that does not apply to you. 3 means it fully applies to you. And then 1 and 2 are in between. I'll read it one more time. I would be good at a dangerous job because I can make up my mind quickly. The next one. If something better comes along, that's okay to cancel a long-standing appointment. If something better comes along, it's okay to cancel a long-standing appointment. Next, seeing an animal injured or in pain does not bother me in the slightest. Seeing an animal injured or in pain does not bother me in the slightest. 0 does not apply, 3 fully applies. Next one, driving fast, riding roller coasters, skydiving. These things appeal to me. Driving fast, riding roller coasters, and skydiving. These things appeal to me. Next, it doesn't matter to me if I have to step on other people to get what I want. It doesn't matter to me if I have to step on other people to get what I want. Next, I'm very persuasive. I have talent for getting other people to do what I want. I'm very persuasive. I have a talent for getting other people to do what I want. Next, cheating on your partner is okay so long as you don't get caught. This is where everyone hides their answers. Cheating on your partner is okay so long as you don't get caught. Next, I find it easy to keep myself together in situations when others are cracking under pressure. I find it easy to keep myself together in situations when others are cracking under pressure. And then finally, if I am able to con someone, that's their problem. They deserve it. If I'm able to con someone, that's their problem. They deserve it. Okay, so please add up your scores, get a cumulative total. This particular inventory actually is a measure of success, but let me tell you about the scoring first, and then I'll tell you what it is that we did. On this particular inventory, 0 to 10 would be considered very low, 26 to 30 would be considered very high, and then all the other sort of degrees in between will let you know where you fit on the psychopathy index. In other words, are you a psychopath? All right? Now you'll notice I did not have you share your answers with anyone, because someone would inevitably go screaming out of the room because they're sitting next to a potentially a psychopath. In fact, in a room this size, the odds are pretty decent that one person scored 26 to 30. Now you may think that's, I don't want to know who. You may think that that was a little cheeky and a little, I'm trying to be cute, but I'm actually quite serious. There's a man on the West Coast named James Fallon. James Fallon has been examining the mind through MRIs for 30 years. He can tell you if a person is indeed a psychopath based on their MRI, the lobes and the nodes of the brain, if they are larger or smaller or sometimes non-existent. He can tell you if a person is indeed a psychopath or has psychopathic tendencies. At the same time, on the East Coast at Columbia University, Kevin Dutton and some other researchers have written this book called The Wisdom of Psychopaths. And they basically explain how we need people with psychopathy in their blood. We need them in our culture because they can do things that not everyone else can do. And in fact, if you start to look at the population, you start to see that there are certain types of people that usually rate higher on that psychopathy index. People like CEOs. You will find more people that are CEOs that rank high on the psychopathy index than the general population. The same goes true for Tibetan monks. I have no idea why. They have no idea, I guess, but whatever. And then the thing I think that is the most intriguing, I heard Kevin Dutton and James Fallon talking once on a panel, and they agreed that test that you just took would be the best measure of success for a neurosurgical residency. For a student going into a program where they're trying to become a surgeon, especially neurosurgeons, that test is a better indicator of success than is GPA, than is grade, than is how far your parents got in their schooling, than anything else. That's the best thing that we have. When we start talking about success, we have more information about what it is to be successful than we have ever had before. What I want to try to talk to you about today are some of those elements of success that we can start to tap into or tie into in order to help our students be a little bit more creative. Oh, that's okay. Any left? Along the way, I hope to show you some technology resources that will help make your lives a little bit easier, that will help you to do this at scale, that will allow you to do these things in ways that actually are meaningful to you. So, to that end, let's start by talking about what creativity and innovation actually are. I have a short little exercise. I'd like you to please participate. If you could, please say to the person next to you, as succinctly as you can, when you think of creativity, or I'll allow you to use innovation if you'd rather. When you think of creativity or innovation, what do you think of? All right, how would you define that? Please say that to someone next to you so we can get something on the record. All right, go ahead. What did you come up with when you answered what is creativity or what is innovation?
Outside the box.
Okay, outside the box. Can you unpack that just a little bit? No. So I assume you mean thinking in ways that other people don't think, right? Okay. What else?
This thing.
Yeah.
Creating something new.
Creating something new. So thinking outside the box and creating something new. Excellent. Somebody else said, try to say something.
Risk taking.
Risk taking. Not being averse to risk. Very good.
Self-expression.
Oh, now here we go. Correct. What?
Self-expression.
One more time.
Self-expression.
Self-expression. All right. And freedom. That's what somebody said over here. Yeah. Two more.
Imagination.
Nice.
Problem solving.
Problem solving. As we start to talk about creativity in an educational context, I think that it's really important that we have some sense of an underlying concept that is the same to one another. When you talk about creativity and innovation in a learning context, what we are starting to really get at is the ability to do the things that you just heard in a strategic and functional way. So to me, my job as Chief Innovation Officer at St. Leo was really to bring to bear all kinds of things that I had seen in all of my travels around the world. And I have traveled to many, many countries talking to educators about these very things. Was to bring to bear those things that worked, that were creative, innovative, that solved problems in a way that we could, get it at St. Leo. So to me, let me see if I can give you a definition that works with all the things that you just said, all right? If learning is the changing of something that used to be known into something that is new and better, and that's a really important distinction. All right, it's not just something that's new, but it's something that's new and better. Let me see if I can give you an example of this. If you have shoes that tie, I would like you to please put them out in front of you, and if you don't have shoes that tie, get near somebody who does. Find somebody with shoes and tie. There's somebody here. I see it. Look at this side. All right. Now, here's what I would like you to do. Those of you, you're all going to be on spotlight here if you have shoes to tie. I would like you to please untie one of your shoes and tie it again. Okay. Now, you have seen someone tie and untie their shoes. Did anybody tie their shoes in a way that was foreign or unique to anyone else in the room? Did you look at that and go, wait a minute, why did you tie your shoe that way? Did you do the wrap thing? No? What was unique or unusual?
It was for running and you loop it this way and you crisscross it.
Oh, good, good, good. The run, yeah, so that's actually a trap. So did you do it or did you see someone do it?
I just did.
Yeah, so there's, you know that eyelet in the back of some of your shoes? You can create these cool little loops back there that will actually snug your shoe up. That's a little different than what I'm talking about. That's cool. Here's what I'm going to tell most of you. You tied your shoes wrong. Did you know that? This video, and I'm not going to have time to show you the video itself, but go check it out. It's on TED. It's only 3 minutes long. He explains how you have tied your shoes wrong your entire life. And basically, it works something like this. Most people, as you tie your shoe, you go cross, loop, round the loop, and you pull it through, right? The problem is, that is the weak form of a knot. There's a weak form of that knot, and there's a strong form of that knot. Instead, if you want your shoe to untie less, and here's the research around it, most people will spend an extra 2.5 days of their lives tying a shoe for the second time because it came undone the first time. All right, that's not good. So, instead, what you want to do is you want to go cross, and then you want to form your loop, and instead of going around the way you were taught to do it, you go the other direction. Now you have formed the strong version of the knot. You will know this if you tie the knot and then you pull at the edges of that knot. It will not turn the knot on the bias of the shoe. It instead will keep it in an adverse way to the. It'll keep it perpendicular. All right. So here's what I'd like you to do: tie it correctly. Untie your shoe and tie it the opposite way that you're used to.
Now, up until that moment, I would have thought that by
All right, we have video. Thank you guys. Thank you. Now, those of you that just tied your shoe correctly for the first time ever, all right, for the first time ever, a simple question: was it weird? Yeah, it's absolutely weird. For those of you that didn't get the opportunity to do it, take your hands, put them out like this, slap them together, rub them, fold them, and put them in your lap. All right? Now you can look down and you can see which thumb you have over the other thumb. Right? Now, hands out, clap, up, put them together incorrectly, the other way. How's it feel? Yeah, right? Feels weird. Feels unusual. Now that has nothing to do with correctness. You're actually born that way. That's in your DNA. But this that I just explained to you around how you tie a shoe is correct. So learning is really the replacement of an old way of thinking or doing with a new and better way of thinking or doing. But here's the problem. I just gave you all a better way to tie your shoe. I can almost guarantee that not one of you will do it after you leave here. Because you're used to the old way. You've gone your entire life tying that shoe the other way. You can do it without really thinking. You don't have to concentrate. It doesn't feel awkward. You can just do it. So most of you will say, I'll take the risk of having an untied shoe. I'm okay with that. And you will tie it the way you have always tied it rather than the new way. That's what happens every single time you learn. You cannot unlearn something. That's impossible. Your brain doesn't expel the old way and only take on the new. Instead, you now have two choices to make. So if you are teaching someone math or science or history or literature or English, whatever it is, you give them that new piece of information, they now have a choice to say, I'm going to disregard the old way of doing and replace it with the new way of doing. That's not very easy when the old way is something you have done over and over and over and over again. So, learning is the replacement of an old way of thinking or doing. Innovation, as you all just talked about a moment ago, to me is the juxtaposition or remixing. So it is when the two things collide, or it's when you bring the old and the new together for a better process, product, service, or situation. Put those together, and I think you get what we're after here. Learning innovation is how I call it. That's how I term it. Learning innovation, the juxtaposition or the remixing of old and new methods, philosophies, or contexts to create better ways by which to replace old ways of thinking and doing with new and better ways. That's out of the box. That is free. That allows us to do some things that we want to do, but learning is still at the heart. And when learning is still at the heart, then we are able to really move forward in a significant way. So, as we talk about this, think about these quotes around innovation specifically for a university. Clayton Christensen said, "It's easier to change the culture of higher education from the outside rather than from within." So if you've read Clayton Christensen's work, you'll know that this is a drum he beats all the time. Einstein is said to have said, we cannot solve a problem by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created it. So how do we deal with that? How do we fix that? When all of us are inside higher education, when we were raised with the problems, repeating sometimes the problems because that's the way we do stuff. How do we fix that? I'm going to argue for helping our students as well as ourselves start to come up with new ways of innovating and creating in a learning context. One of the things that I think we have to really start to focus on is how the brain picks up elements, and one of the things that our brain really likes is patterns. Do you guys see the words? I see that. That's the easy part. Do you see the horses? Now I'm watching because it looks like about half or maybe more of you didn't know there were horses there, and so you do this.
Yeah.
Oh, I got it. I got it. And when you see that pattern for the first time, something remarkable happens in your brain. Something happens in your brain that does not happen almost any other time during your day. You experience a surge of a couple of different hormones that actually allow you to learn better, faster, and retain longer for a short period of time. This concept was brought out in John Medina's book, Brain Rules. If you've not read it, it is a must-read for every educator. Brain Rules is fantastic. But he talks in there about the pattern of the power of pattern finding. Now notice that I said finding, because when we discover patterns that we did not know existed before, really good things happen. Here is an example of what I'm talking about. This is a game that I play with my daughter. She's almost 8. She loves games like this, where she goes in and has to find the hidden things in this very, very messy space. All right, she has to figure it out. This is excellent for her brain, because what happens when she first discovers a pattern, when she first sees that pattern, it will not just save her life. You do see the lion, right? Because if you don't, he sees you, right? It will not just save your life. It actually releases these great chemicals in your brain. It releases at the same time endorphins and dopamine. When you first recognize a pattern, when you first understand a framework, when it really becomes apparent to you, you release the two chemicals, the hormones in your brain that make you both excited and relaxed at the same time. You realize how remarkable that is? That's highly, highly unusual. You are excited and relaxed at the same moment because you got it. You figured it out. And when that happens, you have about a 7-minute window of exceptional retention, comprehension. You have the ability to understand other things. That's the moment when teachers should be calling in all the other things that you've been trying to put together, because now that pattern makes sense to the person and they can get the rest of it. But what happens in most educational contexts when the student uncovers the pattern? We praise them, right? Good job. Fantastic. Go take a break. Well done. Go get some lunch. Go to recess. Whatever it is you do. Go and leave. No. That's time to pounce. The time to exploit it is right then. So as we start to talk about creativity and innovation, we've got to take advantage of what the brain is naturally good at doing. John Medina would argue that patterns are exactly how we live. We live with patterns. We create patterns so that we have shared meaning and context. And it's not until you master that pattern that you really get a decent sense of how to go on. These frameworks are all around us. In every single discipline, in every walk of life, we are trying to create patterns. We are trying to find similarity and context. When we do that, good things happen. Do you see the faces in this picture? There are 22 of them. I'll show you a few. John Medina would argue that we should line the walls of our schools with pictures like this, so that our students, as they are walking into our classrooms, they look at the wall, they say, what am I looking at here? Oh, I got it. And they walk in primed and ready to go. We have to consider how we create curriculum to allow students to formulate patterns, to craft patterns, and then to use those patterns. That, to me, is at the heart of what we're trying to do when we start talking about creativity and innovation. You know what games are? Pattern building. When you put gamification into your classroom, if you do it in a way that is effective, your students will be building patterns. That's often highly creative, highly innovative. That's the kind of thing that we're after. So, let me give you a stair-step approach to how we become innovative or creative in our learning context. Now, this is based on a list that comes out of one of my favorite books of all time, How to Get Ideas. This book by Foster. Foster is a marketing expert. He has nothing to do with education other than teaching people how to get ideas. But he has run ad agencies and marketing agencies. And his book, How to Get Ideas, is an excellent primer to help all people try to figure this sort of thing out. So he's got a list that I have taken and remixed a bit. I've added a couple of things of my own. It starts with defining the problem. So the very first thing that you've got to do if you want to have innovation and learning take place, creativity and learning take place, is you've got to find a problem. All right, that's not to say you can't be creative without a problem. There are all sorts of people who are creative without finding a problem. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about creativity in the context of learning. Okay? So first of all, define a problem. I don't know how many of you watched John Oliver. This is from last week tonight. This came out just a couple of weeks ago, where he was talking about standardized testing. Testing is something that we've been talking about in education as an issue for a very long time. I want to play just a very, very small clip, because there's a lot of swearing in this, so I can't play the whole clip, okay? I'm just play a very small clip that talks about one such problem.
Apple night. So, how did we get here? Well, these tests, they take a lot of them.
Students are taking between 10 and 20 standardized tests depending on the grade, a total average of 113 different ones by graduation.
113 is a...
We have got students coming to us who are used to lecture, test, lecture, test, lecture, test. Yeah? To me, I think that's a problem. That is not really the foundation for creativity. That is not the foundation for innovation in learning. But that is the context in which they arrive on our doorstep. Do you know the Google question? Yeah? Have you heard of these? Google used these for a long time. They've stopped using them because they found that they're not as helpful as they originally thought. But for those of you that don't know what the Google question is, I saw a few heads saying, no, you don't have any idea. The Google question is a question they used to ask in an interview to get people to expand on their thoughts so that they could watch the thinking process. All right, and so there was a famous story, the reason that this kind of got out. There was an executive from Microsoft who went to a conference for human resources. And at the conference, there was someone from Google. And that Google person talked about the Google question. And in fact, the exact story that was used was this one right here. How would you weigh a Boeing 747? So the Microsoft person heard that, went back to Microsoft and said, we've got to implement these questions. Now, we won't call them the Google question, we'll call them the Microsoft question, right? But we're going to ask these really interesting, hard to figure out questions so that they can be unpacked, and we're going to ask our interviewees that, and we're going to get really great, clever people like Google has been getting for so long now. And so she told all of the people who worked under her, these are what goes on in an interview, and then here's what happened. For about 2.5 months, Microsoft didn't hire anybody. There was this weird, it was almost like a hiatus on hiring. Nobody could figure out why. Until one guy went in to become, he wanted to be a vice president of software engineering. And so he went into his interview, and the interviewee, he was there, the interviewer was there, and so she said to him, hey, got your resume, great, I love it. I just have to start with a few questions. My first question to you is, how would you weigh a Boeing 747? Now, the software engineer, his first response was, I'm sorry, I might be in the wrong interview. Is this for Microsoft? They said, yeah, no, you're in the right place. I just want to know, how would you do it? How would you weigh a Boeing 747? And he thought about it for a moment. He goes, okay, I think I would Google it. And they go, no, you can't do that. That's not an option. We got to find something else. He goes, okay, I can't Google it. I guess call Boeing. I mean, they would know, right? It's their plane, they would know. She said again, sorry, you can't do that. There's no phone a friend here. You got to find your own way, your own path down this. And he thought about it. Finally, he looked at the interviewer. He said, do you have a 747 that you need weighed? I don't understand. And she said, no, just answer the question. He did not answer it to his satisfaction or to her satisfaction, but he left the interview very frustrated. And he called a friend at Microsoft. And he said, what is going on with your interview process? That was the weirdest, most horrible interview I've ever had. What exactly are you doing? And he explained what happened, and so the person on the other end said, I don't know, let me look into this. And they began looking into it, and they found out exactly what was going on. The Microsoft question was being asked in such a way that if they didn't give a specific answer, they were cut out of the pool. That, to me, sounds an awful like some of the standardized tests that our students have come into our experience having taken, right? Why am I taking this? What is this for? How does this help me in life? I don't know what it is that you're after. I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to do here. When I think about what it is we're after, we have to be very, very careful to know what we're trying to get at. These questions are designed to showcase some creativity. They are designed to showcase some innovation. They are not convergent thoughts. They are divergent thoughts. That's what the questions were designed to do. So we've got to be very clear about what it is that I think that we're after. Let me give you another example. This is another famous one. How many piano tuners are there in Chicago? Let me see your lateral thinking for a moment. I would like you, with 2, 3, 4 people around you, start to deal with that. How would you come up with an answer to that question? All right? Just in little groups of 2, 3, 4. Go ahead, quickly.
Yellow pages.
The yellow pages, what would you do with those?
Look up piano tuners.
Just count piano tuners, right?
Yes, check their address.
Okay, there's one way to handle it. I gotta ask you, did you get an answer? Yeah, did you Google it?
Oh, I was saying yes, yellow pages.
Oh, okay, because I saw you with your phone. I thought you were Googling it.
Oh, no.
Ask Siri, that's what I thought you were doing. And by the way, Google has an answer to this question. Now, Wolfram Alpha also has an answer to this question, and they'll tell you it's better. Right? What's another way you might do it? A trade organization, good. See if you can find a membership list, yeah? I've asked this question of dozens of audiences over time, and they see stuff like, well, call churches in Chicago. They probably have more pianos than anyone. See how many tunings it takes, right? And then you can start to determine based on the number of churches, maybe how many piano tuners are there. And then start to find out how many pianos are in homes. And then you see how many tunings they take in a year, and then, right? Now, if we were to take this and turn it into a standardized test question, it might look a little bit more like this. So we're not getting at divergence. We're not asking for creativity. Instead, we're looking for calculation. That's all this does, right? You give this information, which leads to this calculation, which then leads to a little bit more information, which leads to this calculation, which leads to a little more information, which leads to this calculation. That's not necessarily helping us understand creativity or innovation. That's helping us know if somebody can do some algebra. Yeah? Now, if that's what you're after, fine. But oftentimes, I think it's not. We are expecting these tests to give us some sort of creativity index that it just isn't giving us. So as we start to talk about what this looks like and how this actually plays out, let me take it one step further. Think about the lecture test mentality, and here's what ends up happening. If you've not read the book, Lies My Teacher Told Me, I really recommend it. It's a very good read. It is about how history is taught to high schoolers in the United States. And in this book, which was written by a history professor who has been testing students for 20-some years, every year they come into his class saying, what is it you know about history? Well, I want to know what you learned about history. And he has got some really definitive examples of what students have learned about history that are just incorrect. So one of the examples I can give you is, this is what Columbus is to high schoolers who are coming into college. This is what they say they know about Columbus. They know Columbus was born in Genoa to poor Italian parents. Columbus was a great navigator, and because he was such a good navigator and had figured out that the world indeed was not flat, he convinced the King and Queen of Spain to give him the Nina, the Bent, and the Santa Maria, which they barely outfitted, and they had all sorts of bad weather along the way. They barely made it, but they were able in these tiny little ships to get across. The sailors were so upset because they were worried they were going to fall off the edge of the planet because they thought that the world was flat, and they didn't know what was going on, so they almost mutinied several times until he finally discovered America. That is what high schoolers coming into college say they know to be true about Columbus, and they have said that for decades. The problem with that list is that everything on it is wrong. Everything. Here's how we know some of those things are incorrect. There's the book, by the way. He was likely not Italian because he could not write in Italian. His Italian was filled with grammatical problems and all issues with syntax. He could write perfectly in Spanish, and he also wrote pretty well in Portuguese. So he was very likely not Italian. He was probably Spanish or Portuguese. In fact, there is some indication he may have been Jewish. He may have told people he was Italian because he actually had a Jewish heritage, and he looked Italian, and that was the only way that they'd let him be a captain of a ship. At the same time, everybody at the time knew that the world was not flat. They had known that from about 1000, that the world was not flat. Those 3 ships were huge, and they were well outfitted, and the weather was great. You know how we know the weather was great? Because Columbus wrote it in his own journal. Textbooks like to add some sort of conflict. So they talk about the weather, and they talk about, and it's just a lie. It's just not true. The sailors were not upset at all, because they knew the world was not flat. They knew they were headed towards gold, and that's what they wanted. They were looking for gold. And then finally, Columbus discovered nothing. Right? There were, first of all, people already here, but they know that there were explorers here long before Christopher Columbus. We have found coins from the Romans in Utah from the 1100s. We know that he didn't discover anything. So as you start talking about Columbus, and we start talking about lecture, test, I think we're getting the problem wrong. There's a guy named Richard Light who did this fantastic set of studies up and down the New England coast. He asked students at colleges, he said to technical schools, community colleges, Harvard, Ivy Leagues, R1s. He asked all these students, over 1,600 of them. He asked in a 2 to 3 hour interview, a 24-page interview guide. He said, hey, I want to know about your college experience. And one of the questions that he asked was, what was your favorite course? Those students said to the person, their favorite course was the one that was unique. It was unusual. It was problem-based. It was the class where they had the mock trial. It was the class where they fed the homeless at the end of the semester. It was the class where they presented to the board of a local department department store on a new marketing strategy. Those were the classes that they loved, that they remembered, that they actually tied back to their lives. They were not the lectures, they were not the labs, they were these. This led Richard Light on a panel I once heard him say, why aren't all classes like that? Why aren't we giving that gift to our students to allow them to define some problems and then go? Conflict, to me, is a motivator. Conflict is something for some students that they don't like. They don't like conflict, and so they want to deal with conflict. They want to uncover conflict. That is a catalyst, often I have found, for learning, for innovation, for creativity, when you've got conflict. You want to talk about conflict in Columbus? Let's talk about mass genocide for a minute. How about the Arawak people? There were 3 million of them or so when he landed, and within 25 years they were gone. All of them. There were 0. Why not talk about the sex trade that he created? Here is a letter that he wrote in 1504 from himself to some friends back in Spain. He said that they were rewarding dignitaries and lieutenants with native women to rape. Here's what he said. It's very general, and there are plenty of dealers who go about looking for girls. Those from 9 to 10 are now in demand. That is a catalyst for learning. It's controversial, it's conflicted, but you know what you can do? You can go back to primary sources, and you can look it up, and you can argue it, and you can debate it, and you can talk about, is it effective or not? And suddenly, you can talk about things in a more creative, innovative way than you ever have before. My favorite teacher that has ever talked about problems and how you uncover problems effectively is Dan Meyer. If you're not familiar with Dan Meyer, you should check him out. He's on YouTube, he's on TED, he's giving TED Talks. He is a science and math teacher who then went on to Stanford to get his degree in instructional design. He goes around the world talking about how to teach better. And he did this took this little challenge about how would Khan Academy teach silly things. And he used it as an opportunity to talk about problem-based education, do-first education. Let me see if I can show you what he said.
So maybe you've heard about this Angry Birds game and you want to know what it's all about. The first thing you want to do is download the app and then open the app. On the next screen, you're going to see a large button that says play on it. Go ahead and tap that button. Then on one side of the screen, you'll see a pig looking happy. On the other side of the screen, you'll see a slingshot with a bird who's angry inside of it. Pull that slingshot back on a trajectory that will hit that pig and explode it. That is the goal of Angry Birds. Now, after that, what we should notice is that, okay, wait. Obviously, Khan Academy would never lecture about Angry Birds. But what makes Angry Birds different from math and science? Angry Birds makes it easy to start playing, experiment, get feedback, and learn. I'm not saying lectures and explanations are never necessary in math and science, or in Angry Birds for that matter. When I couldn't get past that one really tricky level, I went online and found a walkthrough. But the walkthrough, the explanation, wasn't the first thing I did when I experienced Angry Birds. So why does Khan Academy make an explanation the very first thing a student experiences with a new topic in math? When we put the explanation first, we get lousy learning and bored students.
Now think about the paradigm that shifts. For everyone in this room, myself included. I grew up in a system where the teacher stood up front and said, I am the fount of knowledge. I need you to listen to me tell you what's important, and then after I tell you what's important and you have memorized it, I might let you go practice. Versus saying to your students, students, there's a problem. Either they come up with it or you come up with it. Here is the do first part. There's a problem. I want you to fix that problem. What do students do? Students go, yeah, all right, we can do that. We can fix that problem. Let's fix the problem. All right, let's get excited. We're going to fix the problem. Professor, I don't know how to fix the problem. Exactly. So let me give you some assets. Let me put some things in your way, like myself as a consultant, not as a teacher, but as a consultant. Let me give you some readings. Let me give you some websites. Let me give you some subject matter experts that you can talk to. Let me give you some other things that you can then pull from because now you're motivated to learn. You want to learn because you started with the problem first and then went to the learning. When we start talking about creativity and learning innovation, I really believe that do-first education is going to get you there much, much faster. To that point, you've probably heard of this your entire lives. Tell, show, do, review, ask, right? Those 5 things, if you put them in an educational context, good things happen. My problem is not the list. My problem is the order in which we wrote it. Because everybody knows the list in that order, and I think it's wrong. We should have put do first. I want to help you encode this. I know from neuroscience that if you have both declarative and non-declarative information happening at the same time, and I'm going to talk about that in the keynote today, that good things will happen to your brain. You'll remember it better. So I'm going to help you. I would like you to please stand up and face one other person. Go ahead. Please start marching in place. I would like for one of you to say do, the other person to say show, the next person to respond to tell, then back to review, then ask, and on a loop, go faster and faster and faster. After this, if you see someone in line that was in this session, look across the buffet line from them and say, do. And if they don't respond with show, hit them with a piece of bread. After you have started with a problem, now we have to gather some information. I put up here The 4-Hour Body by Tim Ferriss. I don't know if anyone has read this book. I will urge you not to do that. This book is basically a book of a guy who says, look, I'm going to try all sorts of crazy things on my body. I'm going to do hormone injections, and I'm going to try crazy diets. I'm going to do all this stuff so that you don't have to. And then he wrote a book saying, here's what you need to do based on the errors that I made. The entire thing is based on a survey of one. That is not the gathering of information. When we talk about gathering information, let's talk about something like this. How about the top 10 books anybody should read before they leave college? There are lists like this you can find out on the internet. This is one that I actually found just a couple of nights ago. This is somebody who's a literature professor that said, these are the top 10 books everyone should read. Now I can already see some of your faces as you're going like this. What? I would not include that book, right? I want to ask you what books you might include then. So let's use a little bit of ed tech. I'd like you to send me a poll answer. You can do it if you've got a device right now. You can go to polllab.com/jborden, or if you want to just send me a text message, send jborden to the number 22333, and you'll be in my polling system. And then you can just start putting whatever book you think applies to best answer this question. What is a book that every student... There you go. Mine's... Oh, that's an excellent book. Good call, whoever said that. What is a book that you think that every student should read before they leave college? Let me give you just a few moments. By the way, whoever voted, you can vote again. You can vote up to 50 times in this particular... There we go. I'm assuming that's an author. I don't know that book. Is that a book? There we go. People are starting to get in. So, I could ask a group of educated people, what are books that you would recommend for every student to read before they graduate from college, right? That might be a better system than just saying, here are the 10 that I thought were particularly interesting. Here are the 10 that I thought were particularly important. I could get a crowdsourced version of this from an audience like this. But let me see if I can show you one better that you can do, all right? By the way, you'll get this PowerPoint deck and you'll see all the answers when you get there, okay? What if you took a consensus cloud and you instead went out to the top 10 lists? You looked at the New York Times list. You looked at the list from wherever, London, Australia. You looked at the list of books and said, if it's on there, I'm going to count it 10 times. If it's in the first spot, if it's in the second spot, I'll count it 9 times. And then eventually you get to see of all the lists that the experts all seem to agree on, which books bubble up to the top. That's how David McCandless built this list. To Kill a Mockingbird was the #1 book that every list agreed everyone should read. That's a consensus cloud, that's crowdsourcing. So you describe the problem, and then you begin to do some information searching. Now, you can search for an idea. And searching for an idea is something that we have a lot at our disposal in order to make that happen. I want to give you a couple of quick ways to do it. First of all, you can have ideas come to you. I love allmyfaves.com for that very thing. This is my homepage. The top 850 websites in the United States today, but look at this list right here. Every week, it sends me 10 websites I have never seen before. I spend no more than 30 minutes every week just clicking on those 10 things. Now, often, the first 7, 8, I'll know immediately, I'll never use this, it's a recipe site or it's a game engine or whatever. But I will often find one that I think, I'm going to save this for later because this might be beneficial. And then I find one that I think, wow, that's fantastic, I can use that tomorrow. This is how I found the site that helps with forgetting curves. Everybody know about the forgetting curve? When you get a piece of information sent to you, you start to forget it. Everybody does. It's called the natural rate of decay for your memory. So what do? Well, you have to remind someone after they've heard it, and they will remember it a little bit longer. And then you remind them again, and they will remember it a little bit longer. And then you remind them again, and they remember it a little bit longer. But here's the catch. You can do an average. You can just take an average. You can say, I'm going to remind you once, and then I'll remind you an hour later, I'll remind you a day later, I'll remind you a week later. You could do that. And you will capture a little less than 1/3 of the population for whom that works. 2/3 it won't work at all. Or you could figure out what everyone's forgetting curve is. You could have them take forgetting curve assessments. You could determine how quickly they start to forget stuff, and then you could remind them just before they forget, because that's the key. If you can remind a person just before they forget something, they will remember it longer. And then you remind them again just before they forget, and they'll remember it a little bit longer. So, if you want to be Teacher of the Year, figure out a way to do that for all of your students, and you'll be good to go, okay? Yeah, right. It's crazy. I can't do that. You can't do that, but you know who can? Head Magnet. Headmagnet.com. If you sign up at Head Magnet, which by the way, students can sign up for free, it will ask you what are the things that are important that you need to be reminded of. And so you create these cards, and then it will start to test your forgetting curve. And it will determine how quickly your rate of decay happens naturally. Now, I realize you may walk out of this room and not remember that, so let me give you a little help. Okay? Headmagnet.com. That disturbing image will burn its way into your brain, all right? But Head Magnet will actually allow you, as you're just typing along, surfing the web, doing your email, whatever, whoop, up pops this thing that you said is important. You go, oh, right, I better look at this. I'm going to study this. Got it. Okay, put it away. A week later, you're looking at whatever. Whoop, up pops this card. Oh, right, this is important. It will do that until you remember something forever. Would you like your students to remember stuff forever? Not bad, right? We can leverage the power of the internet to get some stuff like this done. Rosetta Stone has been using this, by the way, for a long time. Now, they're using the average, but you can actually do this in a one-by-one basis. At the same time, I'm sorry, I'm going to go through this a little more quickly here, because we're almost out of time. The next thing that you want to do is you want to start to flesh out the idea. You want to socialize it. You want to use other people to try to make some sense of it. So you might include some group work around it. Give your students the opportunity to be in groups as they start to explore those creative, innovative ideas and see how it works out. Now, I know a lot of people say, I don't like groups in class. I don't use groups in class because you don't know how to grade or evaluate the one versus the many. Use a site like this, Trello. Trello is fantastic for stuff like this because it allows you to see what the team has determined needs to be done, who has been assigned to that task, and the date in which they're supposed to have it finished. I can see at the end of a semester anybody who did not complete their work in black and white. I don't get the he said, she said, the oh, she never participated, oh, he was a bully. None of that stuff happens. Not in my classes. Because my students participate using this. It's project management light. I can see the members, I can see the communication that they're adding, I can see all of that stuff. So they socialize their experiences, they vet them with one another, and then they begin putting them forward. The last step then that people take, I'm sorry, there's two left. One, forget about it. So you've got your idea, you've got it rolling, you got some ideas, you've vetted it with some other people. Now walk away. Walk away, just for a little bit. Read something else. Do something else. If you want something good to read my blog. That was so funny. But look, here's the reason I put this up here. If you go to the resources button on our blog, innovation.stleo.edu, you will find a list of resources over 500 long. And it will give you a lot of tools like I've been showing you this morning that you can use. All right? Do something other than what you're focusing on. You will find oftentimes that it sparks something to come back to and go, oh, I didn't think of X. I didn't consider Y. And then put your plan into action. At St. Leo, we're about to run a mock debate next fall. We're running a mock debate on campus as if the presidential candidates were going to debate this. We are bringing to that event a class from political science on the presidents. They're going to give us our two candidates. They're going to have the Republican and the Democratic Party. We're bringing our criminal justice majors to this. They are going to make sure that the school is safe, a safe environment for which to do this. We're bringing the marketing program to this. They are going to actually use social media and other things to market it. We're going to try to get people from off campus to come. We're going to invite news agencies and actually make this a big, big event. We are implementing what we have been brainstorming now for a year. That, I think, is a process that will get you where you're trying to go. I apologize for how the visuals worked out. I hope I tap danced to some degree, okay? But let me just put this up. Thank you for your time. I will see you at the keynote in about an hour and a half or so. If you have questions, I'll be up here to ask them, but I know they're about to serve lunch. Thank you.